Welcome back to DAGryffyn Hobby. My name's Dave. It's time to wrap up the project with the Williams Baltimore and Ohio E7s.
The track is yours. Over. Roger that. All clear. Out.
I'm pretty happy with the sound, performance, and the performance of the engines at this point. I was concerned that this tether between the two would be an issue, but it really wasn't. I ran it around my loop with the 054 a few times, pulling the cars, and it didn't cause any binding or any problems. So I'm pretty happy with that. And you really don't see the wires. You see the connector, but luckily I got ones that were black, so it doesn't stand out. The fact that they work, that they sound decent, and that the volume is good, just makes me happy. It's nice when something works. Let's get the shells off and take a look at what I've done inside. Initially, I had mounted the speakers just open in the engine, and they weren't very loud, and there really was no real bass to the sound. Not that there's a lot now, but it certainly sounds a lot better. I was looking for things that I could easily use to put the speakers in. One of the things I came up with was a piece of PVC pipe, and I was at Lowe's for something else, and I saw this piece. Really can't see it from this angle, but I cut it in half. It was about that long. 1 3/4 maybe. It was a junction pipe to join two pipes together, and I cut that right down the middle, and it was just the perfect size to put each speaker in, and it really dramatically changed the sound. I don't recall if I recorded the difference when I was fiddling around with this. If I did, I'll put it in here, but if I didn't, oh well. One of the things I did on this end of the connector was break the clip off so that it would be a lot easier to get apart. Just sliding these together, they fit tight enough that I'm not worried about them coming apart while it's being used. The dummy unit here, there's a lot in here, and it's kind of silly, but it's also what seems to be working. When I tried to run reverse lights out of the board, they just wouldn't work for some reason, and I don't know enough about it to understand why. There seems to be power coming out, but not in a way that's working for me. I'm using these boards here that convert and regulate the AC, change it to a set DC, because I want the lights, well, I don't want to be pumping 16 volts into them, and I want to be able to adjust the brightness, which I can give it more power or less power to adjust the brightness, but also when it cuts power, they fade out, which is kind of just a neat touch. It also helps if there's any interruption of power, they won't flicker. So what I've got set up here is something that Nick had set up, and I'd taken apart so that I could understand it and put it back together. Let's see if I can even remember at this point. In this engine, I have power coming up from the center rail and the common, and I also have power coming from the front powered unit. This is powered by track power in this engine. And this is providing a set amount of voltage for this relay right here. And what this relay does is tell this light when to work. But if we take a step back, what it does is it tells this one when to apply power. So the power that's coming from the powered unit is coming to the relay here, which is in normally closed. So anytime this has power, it's closed. When the front light on the powered unit doesn't have power, that trips this and applies power and turns on the light at the back of this unit. Now, all this would be unnecessary, or most of it would be unnecessary, if I could get the output to work off the board. But for some reason, it's not. And like I said, I don't get it. There's voltage, but it won't power the board. So I don't know if it's outputting DC. I don't know. I gave up and I went with this setup because no other reason than really it works, and I'm enjoying fiddling with the different components. I'm not sure I understand it, okay? There are two light outputs on the ERR board, one for front, one for rear. They're at a set 16 volts, and that's gonna just burn out my LEDs, and I don't feel like having to research specific LEDs for this purpose, since I have these that I like to use for a bunch of stuff. They're cheap and they're easy, and I already had a bunch of these other components anyway. So since the reverse light I can't seem to get to work properly, I only have the front light hooked up. So when the board applies power to the front light, it powers this board here, which gives me the control of voltage for the front lights. I spliced a wire from this, and that's what's running all the way back to the dummy unit. So anytime the board powers this up, that power is sent back to the relay, and the relay is closed. So there's no power at the light. So when the board switches direction and turns off the front light, this then changes position and powers. So it's a kind of a convoluted, overly complicated setup, but it works, and I'm not going to complain about it. Hopefully I described that right and it makes sense. The only thing in the dummy unit is the speaker. That's powered directly from the powered unit, and these three components to make the lights work. Now, the only light I have hooked up at the moment is this one LED, but I will be doing two LEDs and then LEDs for the marker lights. Now, I'd love to get these to switch between red and green, but I haven't quite figured out that yet. I do have small LEDs that are both red and green with separate inputs, but I haven't figured them out yet. So maybe eventually that's what will happen. But for the time being, I want to get an LED in each spot here and an LED here and here to give some illumination to the marker lights. The powered unit, everything's pretty much set, not secure, but working. The hot glue refuses to stick to this for too long, so I'll probably secure this board to the speaker case here or something. I'll figure it out, or make a bracket or something. And then this board is for powering the front lights with the signal from the board. And again, I'll do the two headlights and the marker lights. What I'd really like to do is do all the wiring over again and do it in such a way that there's just exactly enough wire in each spot that nothing is looping and, you know, taking up space and just making a jumble of wires. But that, I think, is just a project for another day when I'm just bored and don't know what to do with myself. One of the problems with using this relay inside the engine is that it's got a bright glowing green and red LED. And that's just a little too much. So I'm going to put a little black hot glue on there. Hope that covers up the light and doesn't mess up the board, because otherwise it looks like Christmas inside the engine. So that should take care of at least the overbearing red and green glow. I wired a connector to the board for the rear lights and the front lights, and I just, at least for now, stuck a couple of LEDs in there for the headlights so that I've got those. And I'm going to consider this done, and at some point in the future I will come back and open these up and revisit the wiring and the lighting and all that stuff at that time. But for now, I think they're done, or at least done enough to consider the project complete.
How's that track look? Are we clear? Over. Negative. Hold your position. Over. Dispatcher here. You're cleared onto the main. Over. Roger that. All clear. Out.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on DAGryffyn Hobby.